I'm really interested in your latest venture, the Global Leasing Resource. Uh, Now tell me about that. How is that different? Why is that different? And when did you launch it? And what's the plans for it long term?
I launched it for a variety of reasons, primarily stemming from intellectual stimulation, which is a selfish desire to do something that gives me satisfaction that one, I'm keeping my mind stimulated, two, I'm doing something useful for the industry. Let me talk about how I think or why I think it's useful. Leasing has been relegated to a product, and that's disheartening. Benchmarking is close to impossible. You take banking. In the world of banking, one could precisely say in the Midwest, the return on assets for 777 banks is a median of 1.1%. The statistics are substantial in the banking industry. In the leasing industry, they're close to non existent. So, one part of Global Leasing Resource collects standardized data, and the focus is on the word standardized data from leasing economies throughout the world that enables the readers to see what the margins are in emerging markets, to see what the debt to equity ratio is in mature markets. So one of the reasons to put out GLR is for benchmarking. The second is, as we sit here today, there is no other place where there's a meaningful directory of leasing companies from throughout the world. Meaningful in the sense, what's their profile, what do they do, what type of assets do they lease. So the lessor directory is the second reason why I believe GLR will be useful and hopefully take leasing more from being a product to being an industry.
Okay. I see that you're going to be chairing the World Leasing Convention to be held in Cairo in early June. Uh, what is that all about? Why are you chairing it? What's the intent of tell me about the event itself.
I've been privileged, Rob, and I really use that word just the way Webster would define it. I've been privileged to chair the World Leasing Convention for the last 19 years. Last year it was held in Istanbul, before that in London. This coming June it will be held in Cairo. The World Leasing Convention is owned by Euromoney. That's the company that bought me out about 10 or 12 years ago. It's chaired by me. I assist them in programming it. On an average, we have about 200 attendees from all over the world, mostly leasing professionals. Of late, mostly from emerging markets who are coming to learn, who are coming to network, get together and listen to 20 odd speakers from throughout the world. So that's what the convention is all about.
Okay. I would like to go back as we're kind of wrapping things up. One more question, more of a ask you to project some insight into the future in leasing. And then after that, I'll ask you more of a personal question about what Sudhir does, the extra 1 hour a day out of the 24 that he has involved in the many things that you do, that you have to yourself. And supposing you don't sleep, I'm guessing you don't. Because I don't know how you do all you do in 24 hours a day. You must have more than us, than more mortals that you are. So I'm going to ask your insight on something. It seems to be the hot topic of the day, even though this conversation is meant to talk about historically. But I want to ask your opinion. The hot topic of the day is the lease accounting changes that are being potentially proposed by FASB. That is, for those who are listening, in January 29th, 2011, the FASB has now taken and closed off the comment period on moving all operating leases and ending operating lease accounting as we all know it today and putting everything back on the balance sheet. And now everybody waits with bated breath to see what they come up with by May or June or July of this year, assuming, if you would, the context is that they do change and everything goes on balance sheet. In your professional opinion, what then changes to the industry? Does the industry continue? Does the industry end? As some are fearing, sky is falling. Tell me, what is your opinion? What happens afterwards, if it happens?
The sky has fallen many times before, and the word that industry pioneers have used, resilience, has carried the industry forward. This will be talked about. It will impact the industry minimally, in my opinion. Let's talk about the minimal part. You take all the large companies that are rated. Well, when the analysts rate a company, you and I both know they take all the off balance sheet financing that currently is not on balance sheet and bring it back into the picture to alter all the ratios. So off balance sheet financing has not benefited the companies that are rated. Where will the impact be? The impact will be with the medium sized companies that have cleverly used off balance sheet financing to make them look stronger than otherwise, with their bankers who have probably overlooked the fact that certain operating leases should in fact be incorporated. So a certain part of the lessee community will be hurt with one of the benefits of leasing being removed, but just one of the benefits. Remember, we said earlier, leasing stands on many legs. In a certain classroom I teach called Winning with Leasing, I tell my students leasing has 30 different benefits. And of those, 4 of them come from off balance sheet financing. So the 26 benefits continue to be there. But even if you look at off balance sheet financing, it's a partial issue. You and I both know that those operating leases that will be booked will be booking a partial asset and booking a part of the debt, because the present value of the minimum lease payments will not be of the whole, WHOLE. So honestly, I don't see this as big a problem as the industry has made it out to be, other than in the following area. The pronouncement is complex. They have added far more complexity to it with purchase options that have to be looked at, the probability of purchase option being exercised, the probability of a lease renewal being exercised. So they've put far more judgment into an accounting standard than need be. And that's going to be a problem of interpretation.
The common thing I am hearing today in the industry about that's the same topic is that, lessees will say, my gosh, as you just mentioned, this is getting so much more complex to analyze, and all the effort to understand how much of the potential purchase option, even if it is at the fair market value at the end, with no stipulated cap or buyout, what is the propensity that we will exercise the buyout, and at that fair market value, and what will it be? That the lessees say this is just too much effort, let's just pay cash for it. Is that really reality? Is that really a threat to the industry? Or is that just an initial knee-jerk reaction?
I think it's more of the latter. I'm not going to use the word threat. It's not a threat. It's definitely a situation that is going to create some problems, again, with interpretation of accounting rules. And some lessees may just say, we're not going to deal with it. But if we look at why entities lease, I think very quickly, those lessees who say we're not going to lease, and I think that'll be an absolute minority because of the accounting changes, they have advisors. Advisors, accountants, will deal with this issue. So I still think it's not as big a problem as it's made out to be. In 2 years, we'll forget about it.
That's very interesting you say that. In 2 years, we will forget about it. If I think about it, going back to 1986, I recall specifically, I got in the industry in 85, and ITC was alive and well, and transactions and structuring, creativity was all abound, and I thrived in that kind of an environment. And in 1 year, new administration comes in, changes in the tax code, ITC disappears. The industry stood on its head for all of 90 days, thinking the sky was falling, and 2 years afterwards, nobody talked about it again. And we went on.
Exactly. Exactly, Bob, and that's what's going to happen. Now, please don't get me wrong. It's a major game changer. It's worth the discussion. All what the associations have done to try to simplify. First, they tried to repeal it. Now, obviously, it's not good for the industry to have a certain benefit be removed. Common sense tells you and me that the lobby groups, the associations, essentially are responsible for lobbying to take care of our industry, to safeguard our industry. So common sense would say that the associations correctly protested the fact that they were going to put operating leases on balance sheet. When they then began to realize they were possibly stuck with it, then they took on, and correctly so, the fact that the pronouncement was far more complex than necessary, and now they're asking for time, essentially, to respond to the complexities inherent in it.
You've hit it right on the head, and I guess full disclosure for the audience, I am on the board of directors of the ELFA, as well as heavily involved in the political action committee and the lobbying that goes on. So, well, we are wrapping up. I guess the last question, as I mentioned, I'll come back to. What does Sudhir Amembal do with the extra time on his hands of 1 hour of every day that's not involved in lease education?
I don't know where you come up with the 1 hour. I think it's premised or prefaced on the fact that there are 24 hours in a day. You and I know that's not true. There are 25 hours in a day. There's enough time for all of us to do everything that we need to keep our lives in balance. But everything needs to be a passion, otherwise it won't fit. And for me, leasing is a passion. My wife is a large part of my passion. She's number one. I do give her enough time. I spend substantial time with friends and family. I take care of myself by skiing with friends, doing yoga every morning. I spend about 20% of my time with not-for-profit organizations. So there's enough time, you and I know that, to do absolutely everything one needs to do to keep one's life in balance. And I'm grateful I've been able to do that.
Besides teaching us about the industry as you've continued to do, you've now taught us how to live life in as short of words as possible. Unfortunately, you won't make millions of dollars writing a book that would fit on one page, but much appreciated for that, to keep it brief.
Thank you.
So, Sudhir, that's the end of the interview. Is there a question you would like me to ask you that you think I didn't ask that the people who will view this today and in the future would like to know about Sudhir, would like to know about the industry, or what?
Your questions have been penetrating. You've asked everything I think that we needed to talk about, plus some more. I've enjoyed the interview very much. If at the onset I didn't say that this is a great privilege, I'll say it now. I deeply appreciate what you're doing, Bob. You've given our industry something, as they look back 5 years, 10 years from now, a legacy as you interview people who you believe, and I'm again grateful that you've chosen me as one of them, as you believe have had an impact on this industry. I think Leasing Avenues is phenomenal. I'm so glad you're doing it. You've asked the right questions. I hope I've given you the right answers. I'm grateful. I use that word often. It comes from the heart. I'm grateful.